Put out a video recently talking about plot armor. Here's a specific version of plot armor. It's called Saved by the Timeline, or you could say Saved by the Canon. What I mean here is, for example, in the Kenobi show, it's like, oh, is anything going to happen to Obi-Wan? We know nothing's going to happen to him because this show is set before the original trilogy. Obi-Wan appears in the original trilogy. Is anything going to happen to Leia? As she appears in the later films, nothing can happen to her. Same thing goes with Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, Luke, Darth Vader. That was one of the big problems, I'd say, of the Kenobi show. Didn't feel like the stakes were very high. Didn't feel like there was much tension because most of our main characters are saved by the timeline because we know they're going to appear in later movies, so nothing can happen to them. Also, think about the movie Captain Marvel. You're introduced to young Nick Fury and Phil Coulson. In that case, we know they're going to survive past the events of Captain Marvel because they appear in later MCU films. Also, think about Captain America the First Avenger. Because that movie's a prequel, we know what has to ultimately happen. Steve has to make it to the modern world, and so he can't die at the end of the movie. Also, think about Rogue One. I mean, obviously, the main characters are not saved by the timeline because they don't appear in the original trilogy. But you have Mon Mothma, not Saw Gerrera actually, but Mon Mothma, Leia, Tarkin. If you have a few characters in there that are saved by the canon because they're going to appear later. Also, let's see, if you think actually about the Fantastic Beasts films, or those are prequel to the Harry Potter movies. So we have Dumbledore in those, and we know he's going to make it out of it because he appears in the Harry Potter films. He can't die yet. Also, let's see, I'm trying to think about the Hobbit movies. Those are prequels to Lord of the Rings movies. Do any characters from Lord of the Rings show up in the Hobbit? I think doesn't Legolas show up? If so, then we know he has to survive. And I mean, if you look at the Clone Wars show, we know Anakin's gonna turn into Darth Vader. We know Obi-Wan's gonna survive. We know that Mace Windu, the other Jedi that confront Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith, are going to make it out of it. At the time, we didn't know what was going to happen to Ahsoka because she doesn't appear in the Star Wars prequels. And, let's see. Yoda, yeah, is another example. Count Dooku, Palpatine, of course. You have some of those characters in there that are saved by the canon, saved by the timeline, because we know they can't die in the Clone Wars.